Officer Daniel Brooks stared at his partner with shaking hands. Something was wrong with Officer Miller, terribly wrong. Miller's skin had turned pale like cold paper, his eyes empty and gray, staring straight ahead as if he couldn't see Daniel at all. His mouth hung slightly open, and when he took a step forward, his bones cracked loudly in the silent hallway of the police station. "Mike, what happened to you?" Daniel whispered, backing away. Miller didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head slowly to the left, the same way they found the missing girl earlier that night. His body jerked once, twice, then he rushed forward with unnatural speed, knocking Daniel across the room like he weighed nothing. Daniel crashed into the file cabinets, gasping in pain. He looked up in horror as Miller approached him, but it wasn't just Miller anymore. Something else was inside him. Something they had brought back from that old house during the investigation. Something that followed them home. Daniel grabbed his radio. "Officer down. I repeat." Before he could finish, the lights flickered, and all of them went out. Darkness swallowed the entire department. Miller's breathing echoed in the dark, slow and heavy, almost animal-like. Daniel tried to crawl away, but Miller's shadow grew taller. Larger. Wrong. Then a cold hand touched his shoulder, and the building went silent. The horror began the night they returned from the investigation. Earlier that day, everything was normal. They were assigned to check out an abandoned farmhouse on the edge of Ashwood, a small quiet town in northern Ohio. A family had reported strange noises and someone screaming inside at night. No one lived there anymore, but people swore they saw lights inside the windows. Daniel and Miller arrived around evening. The place looked like something from an old horror movie. Broken windows, rotting porch, grass so tall it brushed their knees. "Great," Miller joked. "Just what I needed tonight. Ghost house duty." Daniel laughed, but something about the house made the laughter die quickly. Inside, the air felt colder than it should have been. Their flashlights barely cut through the dust and darkness. Every step they took echoed through the empty rooms. They found old furniture covered in sheets, walls scratched like someone had been trying to escape, and strange symbols drawn in black chalk on the floor. "What kind of sick person lives like this?" Daniel muttered. Miller crouched down near one of the symbols. "Looks like some kind of ritual stuff. Maybe kids messing around." But Daniel didn't think so. The drawings looked too old, too serious, too real. Then they heard it, a soft tapping coming from upstairs. Tap, 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 slow and steady like someone was knocking one finger at a time. Miller went first up the stairs. "Police department. Anyone up there?" No answer. The tapping stopped. Daniel's hand tightened on his weapon as they reached the top. The hallway was long and narrow, lit only by the weak glow of their flashlights. A door at the far end was half open, swinging slightly even though the air was still. "Miller, wait," Daniel whispered. But Miller pushed the door open. Inside was a small room with nothing but a single chair in the center, and something sitting in it. At first, Daniel thought it was a doll. But when it slowly lifted its head, they both froze. It was a girl. Young. Pale. Her eyes were wide but empty, staring straight at them. Her head was tilted in the same unnatural way Miller would later mirror. She whispered something, but they couldn't understand. Miller stepped closer. "Miss, are you hurt?" The girl blinked, then whispered again. "You shouldn't have come." The door slammed shut behind them. The lights in the house flickered. The girl's face twisted into something Daniel would never forget, something that didn't belong in any human body. The room shook violently, and shadows crawled along the walls like living creatures. Daniel grabbed Miller and pulled him out of the room, the girl's whisper turning into a high-pitched scream that chased them down the hallway and out of the house. They left as fast as they could, but something left with them. They didn't realize it until later that night, when Miller stopped answering his phone. When he showed up at the station hours later, pale and silent, with blank gray eyes. Now Daniel was trapped in the dark, trying to crawl away from the thing that used to be his partner. As Miller's shadow grew longer and the air turned colder, Daniel whispered one thing to himself. "We brought something back." Just then, a loud crash echoed through the station. Something huge slammed against the wall. Daniel turned toward the noise, terrified. Something else had entered the building. Daniel froze. The sound wasn't just a crash, it was like something massive had hit the wall outside the bullpen. Papers flew off desks. Chairs rolled across the floor. The darkness inside the police station felt alive, thick, and cold, as if the whole building was breathing. "Who's there?" Daniel shouted, even though he didn't want an answer. A deep dragging sound echoed through the station. SCRCH, 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 like long nails or claws were being dragged against the floor tiles. The air grew colder with every second. Daniel's breath formed white mist in front of him. Miller, whatever he had become, slowly tilted his head toward the sound, then toward Daniel. There was no emotion in his face, only emptiness. His bones cracked again as he took one slow step forward. "Mike, please," Daniel whispered. "Fight it, don't let it control you." But Miller didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move except for the slow tilt of his head. Then, without warning, he sprinted. Daniel threw himself to the ground just as Miller's body slammed into the metal cabinets behind him. The impact shook the room. Daniel crawled away, but before he could stand, the dragging sound got louder. Something else was entering the room. Daniel ducked behind a desk, clutching his flashlight like a weapon. The beam flickered weakly as if the battery was freezing. Through the narrow space under the desk, he saw Miller's feet, but another set of shadows stretched across the floor. Long, thin. Wrong. Daniel's radio crackled suddenly, making him jump. "Unit 4. Station check-in. You okay over there?" Daniel grabbed it fast. "This is Officer Brooks. We need backup now. Something is inside the building." Static. Then a voice whispered through the radio. "No backup. It's already here." Daniel's heart stopped. That wasn't dispatch. Miller turned sharply toward the radio, like he recognized the voice. The other shadow moved closer to him, growing bigger on the floor. Daniel held his breath as the shadow stretched, rising higher, taller, until it reached the ceiling. The overhead lights flickered on for 1 second. That was enough. Daniel saw it clearly. A tall, twisted figure stood behind Miller. It had long arms that touched the floor, fingers that curled like hooks, and a head bent the same way the girls had been in the haunted house. Its skin looked stretched and torn, its face hidden by long strands of black hair. It wasn't walking. It was crawling upright like its bones didn't fit the body. The lights snapped off again. Darkness swallowed the room. Daniel backed away slowly, sliding across the floor until he reached the hallway. He knew he had to find the exit. Had to escape before whatever this thing was got to him too. He stumbled into the hallway, flashlight shaking in his hand. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting everything in a dark blue glow. The walls were covered in strange symbols, the same symbols they found in that farmhouse. And then Daniel noticed something worse. More shadows. Not one, not two, dozens, moving through the station, some crawling on the ceiling, some standing crooked in the corners, some dragging themselves across the floor. "Miller brought them," Daniel whispered. "We brought all of them." He sprinted down the hall toward the evidence room, trying to remember the building's layout. Behind him, footsteps echoed, fast, broken, unnatural. Miller was chasing him again, and something else was chasing both of them. Daniel shoved himself into the evidence room and locked the door. He pushed a heavy metal shelf against it, his chest tight, breath shaking. "Come on, think, he whispered to himself. On the table lay their case file from the farmhouse investigation. Daniel grabbed it with trembling hands, flipping through the pages. Photos of the room, the symbols, the girl they found, the missing family. And then he saw it, a drawing in the file. A sketch made by the missing girl months before she vanished. It was the same creature in the police station now. Beside it, the girl had written, "It follows you home." A loud bang slammed the evidence room door. Dust fell from the ceiling. Daniel dropped the papers and backed away. Another bang. The metal shelf shook violently. Daniel aimed his gun at the door, hands trembling. "Stay back," he shouted. The banging stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low and broken, whispered through the door. "Daniel, let me in." It was Miller's voice, but too soft, too calm, too wrong. Daniel didn't move. "Daniel, open the door. It's safe now. It's just me." No human voice sounded like that. Another voice whispered behind it. The girl's voice. "You shouldn't have left us." Daniel fired 3 shots into the door, screaming. The whole station roared with movement. Footsteps pounded. Shadows shook the walls. Something screamed in the dark, long, high, and full of rage. The metal shelf began sliding across the floor as something pushed from the other side. Daniel backed all the way to the far wall. The shelf lifted, off the ground and flew across the room. The door burst open, and standing in the doorway was not just Miller, but everything they'd brought back. Daniel raised his gun, but his hand shook too much to aim. The thing took 1 step toward him, and the lights went out. The darkness didn't feel empty anymore. It felt crowded. Alive. Breathing. Daniel held still against the wall, listening to the slow crunch of footsteps moving closer and closer and closer. His flashlight flickered once, then died completely. Miller, Daniel whispered, hoping, praying, that some small part of his partner was still there. If you can hear me, fight it. Please. A low groaning sound answered him. Not human. Not Miller. Daniel crawled blindly until his fingers brushed against a fallen metal pipe. He gripped it tightly. He had no idea where the creatures were. He could only hear them. Some crawling, some dragging, some whispering, some humming the same broken tune the girl in the farmhouse had whispered. Then one voice cut through all the others. The girl's voice. You shouldn't have left me, she whispered in the pitch-black room. You brought us home. Daniel swung the pipe wildly. It hit something with a hollow, sick thud. Not soft, solid, like wood or bone, but whatever it was didn't fall. Instead, the room filled with multiple whispers at once. You brought us home. You brought us home. You brought us home. Daniel stepped backward until his back hit another cabinet. He reached up, searching for the emergency light switch. His fingers touched something soft. It grabbed him. Daniel screamed and jerked away as the thing's icy hand slid off his forearm. He stumbled forward, slamming into the evidence table. Papers flew everywhere. Guns, badges, and body cameras scattered across the floor. He felt around, desperate, until his fingers landed on something familiar, a flare gun. He didn't hesitate. Daniel fired. A burst of red light exploded across the room, revealing everything at once. Miller, his face pale, veins black, eyes glowing gray. The girl, floating a few inches above the floor, head still tilted, hair covering half her face. 3 shadow beings, clinging to the ceiling like spiders, their long arms hanging down. 2 more on the walls, pressing their faces into the concrete as if trying to crawl inside it. And behind all of them, something huge, tall enough to reach the ceiling, its head brushing the lights, its body twisted like broken branches forced into human shape. Then the flare faded. Darkness swallowed everything again. Daniel dropped the flare gun and ran. He had no idea where he was going, only away. Away from the voices, away from the whispers, away from the thing wearing his partner's face. He slammed into a doorway, burst into the hallway, and sprinted toward the back exit. The emergency lights flickered just enough to show the path. Behind him, multiple footsteps followed. Fast, he pushed through the back door and stumbled into the freezing night. Fog blanketed the parking lot. Police cruisers sat abandoned, their lights still flashing blue and red across the concrete. Daniel ran for the nearest car. The windows were fogged. The driver's door was open. He jumped inside and slammed the door. The keys were still in the ignition. He turned them. The engine didn't start. He turned them again. Nothing. Then a shadow moved in front of the car. Daniel froze. Standing right in the beam of the cruiser's flashing lights was Miller. Except it wasn't Miller anymore. His neck was twisted too far to one side. Black veins snaked across his face. His jaw hung open as if unhinged, his chest barely rising with breath. He stepped toward the car. Daniel locked the doors. Miller pressed his pale hand against the window and leaned in, his face inches from Daniel's. His eyes weren't gray anymore. They were pure white, glowing like someone had turned on a light from inside. His lips moved, but his voice wasn't his. You didn't escape. Behind Daniel, inside the car, something whispered right into his ear. You brought us home. Daniel turned slowly. A second face stared back at him from the back seat. The girl. She smiled. The police cruiser lights flickered. The entire station behind them went dark. And Daniel screamed as the girl reached forward. And the screen went black.